And we are live. Welcome, Facebook and YouTube. My name is Sean. I'm a returning citizen here at Wings for Life International, and this is Wings Week in Review. We're going to tell you what goes on behind the scenes here at Wings for Life, what we do, who we are, what we're all about. And I have a guest today, Ken B. He did 39 years in prison, most of it in San Quentin. He's a great story to tell you because he's turned his life around. He's helping others now, and he's a blessing from God. First, I'm going to give you Mary. Mary Briggs here is going to give you a little quick update on what Wings did this week.
Okay, Wings this week took in donations for a yard sale, but we are still looking for a place to have that yard sale. So if anybody here in the Albuquerque area has open space that would like to support Wings by letting us have a yard sale, a pretty big yard sale. We've got 2 containers full. We're not going to empty it all out, but a lot of it's going to that yard sale that we can earn some money. Last week we had a wonderful speaker from the Community Policing Council, Kelly Metz, and so just a reminder for this week, we are not having any Zoom programming because it is the holiday, and so we will be back the following week for that. But just a reminder, and a good thing is we are going back live. We are having live dinners, live meals.
We're back, so now the families come together.
Live speakers. We have families, and we're going to capture it all on Zoom and Facebook. And so, please come and join us from 6:30 to 7:30.
I guess the pandemic is officially over.
Well, so far.
All right, that's great that we get to have the town hall meetings with all the family there, and
Yeah.
great, good stuff.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary.
All right.
I guess that's it. All right, guys. We got a few people in the room. I'm seeing a few people up there. Guys, I'm going to introduce you to Ken. Now, I've known Ken, I don't know, maybe a year. We do a little recovery thing together on Thursday nights. But Ken, I don't know where to begin, but I know you did 39 years in prison. Maybe we can start with, if you can remember that far back, right before you went to prison, what was your life like?
Well, my life as prior to prison was one of hopelessness and living on the streets, and I was hitchhiking around the West Coast for the most part, living off the good graces of whoever happened to pick me up hitchhiking, and there was a lot of drug abuse and alcohol, and very little else. I didn't think that anybody or anyone or anything was really I didn't think anybody cared about who I was, and I didn't think my family had. I felt like that. Now, to a degree, I was wrong on that, but I felt like my family had abandoned me, and I just lived a life that was from one moment to the next.
There's times in my youth I felt like that too, and I know a lot of people struggle with that. But then it comes down to the choices and the people you're hanging out with, and maybe you did something that led you to prison. And we don't have to talk about your charges, but do you remember when you finally did get charged and you knew you were facing prison time? Can you talk about that?
The night after I committed my crime and I took somebody's life is what it's about. I stood on a freeway overpass and I was going to jump. And I stood there for probably a couple of hours and just looking at things, and the idea in my head kept popping up as it's just, I've read enough of the Bible at that time, that an eye for an eye, and I deserved to die for what I'd done, and it just made a whole lot of sense. And at the beginning of all that, I had considered turning myself in, and I said, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that." But after I'd been up there a couple of hours, for what seemed to be the absurd idea, was what I actually did. Is I walked off that freeway overpass and called the police and turned myself in. And so I knew when I got arrested, and that was definitely and I gave them a full confession. They prosecuted me and sent me to the California prison system for a life term.
Wow. I can relate to that freeway overpass. When I first found out I was going to prison, I was out on a bond, and I told my brother that I was going to jump off this freeway overpass right now, and I basically told him, I told him how I felt about him, and hung up on him. And, I was on that freeway overpass for about an hour, and I guess he called the cops on me, and they found me, and they took me to that third floor of the hospital where they evaluate you for 72 hours. But if they didn't come, man, I was seriously thinking about it. It was Highway 4 in Antioch, and I was just gonna jump off and let the cars run over me, man. I get it, man. I get it. But a life sentence, God, how does somebody accept?
Well, I will say by the grace of God more than anything else, it was, when I was still on the, up there on that overpass, I was asking God for just to have mercy on me, and then I was just crying out and kind of going through this feeling like, everything was hopeless. But after I walked off that bridge and made the phone call, I could see God's hand in my life on a pretty good scale. And it was like, they were just guiding me and directing me. It was kind of it was overwhelming at times, of course. And I struggled with it. When I was in the county jail, they put me on some antidepressants, and I was dealing with that and taking them for a good while. But when I got to the prison, I quit taking them, and I started focusing on things. And when I was sent to the first prison that I started to serve my sentence at, it was you had different prisons. Some of them were called programming prisons, and
Okay.
and it wasn't the hard places like San Quentin and stuff like that. This was more of a place where if you could get your life together there, and they had opportunities for many things, including therapy. And I was involved in therapy as well as individual and group, as well as recovery programs, 12-step work, and that 12-step work brought me into a place where I had to go over and pick up the podium and stuff like that for the meetings, and it was in a place where they were holding Bible studies, and so I got involved in that. I found a faith in a God of my understanding, a faith in Christ, and I attended a lot of Bible studies and a lot of 12-step work, and I did, and I was studying electronics, and back then they actually had vacuum tubes in TVs. So
Yeah.
some people scratch their head about what a vacuum tube. So,
What's a TV?
yeah. Well, it was a big box, not these flat little things that they have now. So
I remember you could go to the Safeway in the supermarket, and they had the little testing machines for your tube and the TV, and tell you to buy the new tube for your TV. I remember.
Yeah.
But you were talking about God was watching over you, because I guess you didn't know this at the time, but 40 years later, I know you've actually saved some other men's life, just by helping them what you do. So God had a plan for you. And a lot of lives that you saved were while you were in prison too. And I know that. A life sentence today, though, is what? Is it 30 years? Most people hear a life sentence, they don't really know it's 30 years. Is that correct? Or is it 25?
Well, let's break it down further, because the reality is that when you say life sentence, people don't understand. Then why are you out of prison? And they have life without, and then they have life with possibility of parole. And those are the degrees. I know in Louisiana, if you got life, that's exactly what it is you never get out. And it takes a major, a commutation from the governor and all this other stuff. But in the state of California, you had life with, and then you had life without. And then you got various sentences. My sentence was 7 to life.
7 to life?
7 to life. And then they rolled into shortly after I went to prison, they started handing out for the same thing, 25 to life. And things got, the ball started rolling on tough on crime, and it was like they continued to to hand out harder and harsher sentences, and eventually we wound up with a 3-strike law that was sending the guys to prison for very minor cases. If they had, well, depending on the prosecutor and depending on their cases, there was a lot of people who wound up in prison serving life sentences with 3 strikes as well. And
yeah, I've heard about the guy with 2 strikes. He steals a piece of pizza, and they give him a 3rd strike, and he does life. I mean, you hear that, but I know some of it's true.
Oh, it was very true. I knew a lot of people who were, in that situation there. If they would have been convicted and tried for the thing that their 3rd strike them for, without all the prior and everything like that, they might have gotten a couple years, and they wound up with very lengthy sentences as a result of it. Now, don't get me wrong; some of them had done a lot of crimes prior to that, and they knew that at the time and place that if they got another conviction, that they faced this possibility. But that situation there was just it seemed over the top. It was very, very much a travesty of justice, as I like to put it. So
well, I know when you first went in the late 70s, prison reform was kind of big. They had programs. They wanted to help people, reform their life when it came out. And then I think when Ronald Reagan came in office, that kind of changed. And nothing against our politicians, but what you're talking about when they came out with that tougher on crimes, and so when all this happened, did the programs go away? Did they start taking the programs out of prison? Did you notice that?
No, they started making it more of a point of, well, when I first came to prison, the prison system was well, first of all, there was only 13 prisons when I came to prison. By the time I paroled, there there was I think it was over 39 or better. And,
yeah, that's what I'm used to hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there was I don't want to get into politics and stuff like that. But the reality is that a lot of this stuff was driven by the idea that, you had, in order to build more prisons, you needed to fill them up. And when you got them full, you needed to build more. So you needed more people to fill those up. And, this mindset, and there was this mad rush to lock people up and throw away the key. Right or wrong of it, that's another story altogether.
Right.
But I was there watching it go from 13 prisons to just this explosion, and it was across the country. It wasn't just California that did this. It was everywhere, in the entire country. The federal prisons, the state prisons, and just about every state, if not all of them. So.
It became an industry. It's second largest industry, I think, is the corrections. The first one is pharmaceutical, get everybody hooked. Then let's lock them up, and the third one's medical. Let's get them hooked. Let's lock them up, and then we'll help them.
Yeah. So it was a journey, and the fairness or the unfairness of it all is something that can be discussed for another situation. Or, the thing that I know is that I made these mistakes that I did that caused me to go to prison. The reality is that they sentenced me to a life term. So technically speaking, that's what I could have been given, or I could spend the rest of my life in prison. Although when I first got in there, I expected to be serving around a 14-year term, and I came pretty close to getting out. And so we got certain people were elected into office as governor of California. And this governor made a decision that no lifer was going to get out on his watch, and that
really,
yeah, and it just snowballed, and right about at 1994 or something, or five, I'm not exact on that, is when the Polly Klaas murder happened. And
Holly Klaus, I remember out of Petaluma, the girl that was kidnapped. Yeah.
And that was the catalyst for an explosion of harder prison terms. They did take a lot out of the prisons as far as privileges go. Not all of them, but they took some. They left our TVs, and I think they did that because they knew that if they didn't have something to give us, it's called their babysitter.
Yeah.
They would have. It would not have been a good scene. So,
right. Let me just take a minute to acknowledge these people in the room. Some comments and stuff. Katrina's here. Hello, Katrina. How you doing? I know you got a few things you're asking if the chat room is working. It is. Kathy D. She's from Australia. She's got a son in prison in Australia. Ken. Katrina's got a son in prison, getting out within a year, we think. And Khalil says, "What's up, man? We need more sentencing interviews, bro. I will keep that in mind. Sentencing interviews, okay." And Matthew's in the room. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Matt. I will. And the rest is, I guess, you guys are kind of talking to each other, and that's great because it's also a chat room. So I appreciate you guys being on here. Thank you very much. Hey, Ken, can you remember back to your first week in prison? What it was like? I mean, you watch all these movies nowadays. I mean, did you have to join a gang? Where did you sit in the at chow? At the chow hall? Do you remember what table you sat at? And can you reminisce your first day there?
Yeah, the reception center I went through was it's kind of a distant memory now, but I can tell you is that there was a lot of violence that was going on there. But if you minded your P's and Q's, they left you alone for the most part. I wasn't approached about joining any prison gangs or anything like that, and depended on your race too. But also back then, we're talking again, this was a different time and space inside of the prison system than what it is now. And you hear a lot about this talk about the different prison gangs and stuff like that. I mean, if you wanted to join a gang, you definitely had the opportunities. But I wasn't approached. And like I said, I came in as a very young. And so they decided to cut me a little bit of slack and send me to a place where I wasn't going to have to be in that kind of an environment where the prison gangs were at war with each other and all these other things. It was considered a neutral prison, and you could go there and you could go to school, you could go to therapy, and if you're getting close to getting released, you could prepare yourself for release there too. And they had various trades and various self-help programs, and I got involved in a lot of it. I stayed very active in it.
Sounds like there was hope. There was hope going on there.
Well, like I said, I thought I had a 7 to life sentence, and I had every indication that I was going to be walking out that door in about 14 years served.
Right.
And I made every effort. I wouldn't say every effort, but I worked very hard to prepare myself for the anticipated release at around 14 years. And I got involved in many things, electronics. I was, I learned how to type. I learned how to type really good. At one point, I was typing 120 words a minute. And
we need you over here.
Yeah, well, I'm still at 60, and I learned clerical skills very well. And I was getting myself ready for this eventual release.
Sure.
After my sentence was up, and I'd done an excellent job. When I went in front of the parole board, it was I don't remember, maybe my 4th or 5th hearing. But even prior to that, but the prosecuting attorney, the person who put me in prison, and it was his point, he walked into the boardroom and just shocked me to no end. And he says, "You've done the best performance I ever seen. He deserves to go home." And it just floored me, and it, floored all the commissioners too.
Wow.
And so, I was found suitable, but, and I was given a release date, and I was anticipating walking out of there just shy of serving 14 years of my life incarcerated.
Wow.
And, right at that point in time is when the new governor started, enforcing his new decisions and his new policies.
You
And
could say his name. I could look it up in the history.
it was Pete Wilson,
Figures. Okay. Yeah.
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 and 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 it's all in the news and everything like that. And he took every lifer's date and said, "You're not going home." And then it just snowballed from there. And and eventually the tough on crime idea became even part of the Democrats, and they thought, okay, well, if this is what you got to do to get elected, I'm even tougher.
Sure.
And Gray Davis, when he got into office, he was worse. So
yeah, I remember him too. He got recalled.
Yeah,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger actually started opening up the doors for the lifers.
He did. Yeah.
Yes, he did. So it was interesting. There was a lot of challenges. The redeeming thing that I did is that when it looked like I was never going to get out of prison, I saw and I saw a lot of people who were in the same boat as me. They just gave up. They went back to drinking prison wine. They went back to using drugs that were smuggled in. And yes, there's plenty of drugs inside of a prison, and plenty of prison wine too. But
I know. I've been to prison, so I believe you. I actually never believed people. I used to hear that, but I'll believe it when I see it. Well, I went to prison and it's there.
Yeah, and I run across people every now and then. They say, "Oh, you couldn't been doing that in there." And and I said, well, yeah, you can on a big scale. I mean, I've ran across people who were actually addicted to heroin because they got it so regular. And I made the decision that I was not going to give up. And whether the parole board decided to finally let me go or not, I was going to go into that boardroom each and every time they let me in there and say to them, "You're wrong for what you're doing to me." It was, and I showed them respect and courtesy and carried myself with dignity as a person. And I just made a life worth living. And when you talk about, being of service in those things, that's the idea that I had is I would be of service to other people. One of the big places that I was of service to, and I guess I might as well talk about, was my 12-step work. And, and being clean and sober inside of a prison system. There was a lot of people who really, they'd given up. They, some didn't necessarily go after a lot of drugs and stuff like that, but they never, but they just let themselves get stale. They let themselves get stagnant in their behavior. And they went, they spent their days doing things that were just kind of like spinning their wheels. And, but, I stayed involved. I applied myself wherever I could in whatever fashion I could. I've enrolled in various things. I got a college degree while I was inside of prison. I became a published author. Some of you may have heard of the author Joyce Carol Oates. And I met her personally at San Quentin, and she picked one of my stories for publication. I won National Prison Writing Contest awards. I placed third in a national writing contest. And, I found out I loved that process too. And it gave me a lot of freedom too. And when I was at San Quentin, I taught writing classes. And also because of years of study in the Bible and stuff like that, I taught Bible classes as well.
So you actually grew up in prison and became something. Because we talked about before you were in prison, how you felt about life, and I guess your time in prison, with the hope that one day you're going to get out, but you didn't give up on yourself. I don't know if you would have learned that on your own, not going to prison. Not that I'm sorry you went to prison, but maybe God had a way of putting you there so you could become the man you are today. because I know for myself when I went to prison, I did the AA. I'll say AA. You know, I had to start the AA meetings where I was at because they didn't have any, and thanks to guys like you who sent me in books and literature and stuff. And then I did my church services, and I found a whole group of men around me that we could focus on changing our life while we were in prison. So I really get where you came from. You know what I mean? But do you think going to prison somehow set you in a way where you turned your life around because you were in prison?
Well, that certainly looks
I know
like that's an obvious yes on many levels.
Yeah.
It's like, I can tell you is that I had two brothers, each of us a year apart, me in the middle. The oldest brother is now dead he was murdered out on the streets, and he was living a life that was just pretty much right on par with what I was doing. My younger brother.
He never went to prison? He never went to prison?
And he went twice.
Okay.
He went to prison twice, and I kept writing. I started writing him when I finally, when I started getting a grip on things. I started writing him. I says, if you don't change your program, you don't start doing things, get your life in order, you're going to prison. And he went to prison, and he got out, and I wrote him again. I says, if you don't keep doing what you're doing, if you don't change up, you're going back to prison. And he went back to prison. And so when he got out that time, I started writing him. I said, there's worse things than prison. And it took a couple of years, but he was murdered back in 1994, 95.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
but that goes with that's the lifestyle he chose. Do you think? Is that why?
Well, yeah. And it was like, it was my family was alcoholic. We talk about in meetings about, if you shook my family tree, bottles fell out of it. And it was just so much drinking as a part of our lives, and then it was like there wasn't any real responsibility or anything like that was there. And so I got myself clean and sober, and then my life just started. I had a focus on things, and purpose, and and being of service, and I had a faith in a God, and in Christ, and just trusting that I could live a good life, and the people in the program, the 12-step program I was part of, AA, people bringing in those meetings inside of there, they gave me a belief that I could live a good life no matter where I was at, if I did the principles and if I worked the program as they set it out, and and it worked very good. Now, I remember after my first year of sobriety I'd gotten, I went in front of I was in treatment. I was in therapy. I was individual and group therapy, and I had this one doctor. He was a prison psychiatrist, and he was an old school doctor. He'd been in the prison system about 30 years at that time, and and he told me, he says, and I was telling him about my first year of sobriety, and he says, I remember you when I first met you, and he says, I didn't think you had a chance. You were hopeless, but working this program, doing what I was supposed to do, grabbing hold of, a faith, sobriety, and all those things that were included in it, gave me, a meaning, purpose, and direction. And my life really took off in a very good way. I didn't mean it was easy. I always want to remind people that prison really does suck. It is not a good place to be.
Right.
No matter how much they doll things up and paint a little of this and put a little of that, give you a little bit of this and give you a little bit of that. They even got, I'm hearing they got tablets inside the prison.
Yeah, I've heard they got tablets now. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, big deal. It's like, it still sucks.
But Morgan Freeman's not there. Clint Eastwood's not there, guys. It's not the movies.
No. Well, actually, I saw Clint Eastwood at San Quentin. He filmed the film there. So, but
okay, well, he was there that day.
He
went home.
He didn't stick around. Yeah, but it's there's no question about it that there's a lot of bad things and there's a lot of negatives about what goes on in there. Um, the idea that there's incentives to change. One of the things that happened while I was at San Quentin, and most of my time was there, is that every now and then you'd see somebody come through there, and like you, Sean. And I'll use you as an example,
Sure.
because most of the guys that were at San Quentin with me, because especially when Pete Wilson did what he did, we were a bunch of lifers who were just bottlenecked into the prison system, and most of us really kept our heads on to a degree, because there was this idea that one of these days, and it did change, we could go home if we kept our nose clean, if we did what the parole board expected of us. And there was this whole list of things.
You had the hope.
Yeah, well, we had hope, and we also had, a belief that we had a motivation for keeping our nose clean and doing the right thing. And I saw, and the reality is that, the idea is that many of these people, if they knew better, they'd have done better. Okay. And, but if you take a guy who, coming into the prison system, he has an 8th grade education level, and that's the average, at least in the state of California. And he has an 8th grade prison education, and you tell him you need to go to school, he's going to say, "What for?" But if you tell him, if you give him all these explanations and stuff like that, it really doesn't matter much. But what happens is with the lifer is that, they tell you, the lifers are told, by the counselors who are initially on their encountering them, tell them, if you don't do this stuff right here, you will not be found suitable by the parole board. Okay. And so they get set on a path that gives them a motivation for an education, a motivation for them to change, to deal with their psychological issues, motivation for them to deal with their drug and alcohol addictions, a motivation to do all these things and keep their nose clean. And somewhere down in that process, there comes about this change in their perspective, from it being some force-fed garbage that they got to deal with, to something that they want to do and something that they see as valuable for their life. And those are the dynamics of what this is about, as far as what I see. And back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot of motivation like that, except for the lifers, but we were never getting out. So it was kind of like this spot. All the non-lifers. But occasionally one of them, and going back to you, would come into the system and say, "Oh no, I can't keep doing this." And I'd see guys that would come up, there was a section of the prison at San Quentin that was for non-lifers, and they would come up, it's called H unit. They would come up from H unit, and they'd be attending college classes with us, and they'd be attending AA, and they'd be attending this, they'd be going to the chapel, they'd be doing all these different things. I had utmost respect for them, because they didn't have a gun to the back of their head to tell them to do it. Maybe a family member, maybe an angry wife, but it wasn't
Sure.
Yeah.
Those are the people that realize that they made a mistake and they want to change. And this is the best place to do it. I mean, prison, exactly. You got the time to change. What, are you going to wait till you get out of prison and then change? Come on,
That was what a lot of them would say. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I know.
The non-lifers, they would say, I'll deal with that later. And the minute they hit the door, it was like, where's the drugs and alcohol? And the party was on, and then they say, well, I'm going to party first, then I'll get serious.
Let me get it out of my system first. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it would snowball into one more term. And I worked in the reception center of San Quentin, and believe me, it was big at points, and you'd see guys come cycling back through there sometimes in a 3-month cycle. And, they get into the reception center, they get healthy, they work out, they get all this, and their parole violation would discharge, and they would get out there and they would be on one more run, and they get back in there all skinny again, and they do it one more time.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen guys. I didn't do a lot of time, but I saw a guy come 3 times in the 4 years I was in prison. Three times on violation. He could never get it. And his hustle was stealing chicken out of the kitchen and then trading it for drugs. And that was his daily thing. He had a hustle. He had a drug dealer connection, and life. That was his life. And he did the same thing when he got out of prison. It just, it wasn't stealing chicken from the kitchen when he got out of prison. It was basically the same thing.
Yeah. Well,
I got a bunch of comments. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge you guys because somebody said, "Is the chat room working?" It is, guys. I was just I wanted to get to you guys. I wanted Ken to talk. Let me get to Eric says, "Hey Sean, I have my sentencing coming up in August. So Eric, you know my number or email. It's underneath all the videos. Get a hold of me, man. We'll talk. I'll help you out with that." Katrina says, "Sean, what do you know about the CADR program? Jason is being assigned to a federal detention center near me." So those are the guys basically changing bedpans in a medical facility. They get special privileges, but somebody's got to change the bedpans and do all that dirty work, and that's what that program's all about. They train you in some other medical things, but basically it's changing bedpans. Khalil says, "How long have you been on the bond, Eric?" Okay, I'll let you guys talking, and I think that was everybody. But sorry about that, Ken. I don't forget you guys out there when you're writing your comments, but sometimes we're caught up in a story, so you know what I mean.
Well, from my in dealing with you and talking to you about things and what we're talking about, and you wanted to get me in here a lot sooner. And I saw where you were going. I saw some of your videos. Most of the people who are you dealing with in here, as far as the federal, they're coming in with maybe 2 or 3 years to serve and stuff like that.
Yeah, short timers and going to a low facility.
Well, and on that note, there, my observations and my opinion is that no matter where a person lands, and my experience with the prison system in the entire United States has been is wherever a guy goes to do the time at, there is opportunities and places to apply themselves to make their lives better, and there's different ways of doing it. Each and every to my knowledge, there's never been a prison where they have a dirt yard where you get to go out there and walk an hour a day and that's it, and that's your entire prison term. They have programs. One of the things that I was very involved in is writing, and I was with a writing group. If you want to look it up, the name of the group was called Brothers in Pen. They have their own. They're on the web, and you can find them there. Okay. And then we spent a lot of time learning the process of writing, and no matter what else you might think about the idea of writing and learning the process, its value is just beyond measure. You can learn to be articulate. No question about it is that whenever we're coming out of the prison system, if you can't talk, the likelihood of you getting hired into a good job is going to be much more difficult. But if you can express yourself and you can speak well and do all these things, and these are the parts and these are things that writing will do for you. You can ask my wife; she's just sitting off camera here. She was a retired English teacher, and believe me, she wouldn't marry me if I hadn't been here. And there's many other things, and it's just each prison has those education programs. The drug and alcohol programs, and many of us walk into the prison system with anger issues and violence issues and stuff like that. And learning yes, I do think. Learning how to deal with things in a nonviolent way, de-escalating situations rather than escalating them. All those things are very important as far as when you walk out of the door. Learning how to deal. It's like. And it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. Whether you serve, decades inside or just a couple of years, you're coming out and it's adjustment. It's a huge adjustment coming out of the system. So.
Now you're in state prison and the feds don't have a lot of programs. Some of their bigger facilities may have more but you were in San Quentin, and it's kind of known for its programs. Don't they even have a radio station and a TV station there that the inmates run?
Yeah, they got Ear Hustle, and that was a podcast. I think. Well, I was I was picked by the warden of San Quentin to restart the San Quentin newspaper, and
Wow.
it had been out of publication for over 20 years, and it and it's taken awards. It was recognized at the White House, given an award for their work there. And yeah, San Quentin had a lot of programs, and I'll tell you where it started from. We had a warden there. Her name was Jeannie Woodford, and
Okay.
I actually worked for her when she was a captain. I was her clerk, and
Right.
and so I got to know her very well. And she promoted up, and she became warden of San Quentin. And she was very proactive and very much involved in bringing things in there. And there was a few things going on in San Quentin, and including the college program when she was put in the position.
Yeah, that's another thing San Quentin is known for. Go on.
Yeah, is that they have a college program, and it's one of the, well, it's because the Pell Grants are being returned to the inmates incarcerated. That's going to open up again, but
Oh, really?
yeah, oh yeah,
Tell
oh yeah.
about that.
Pell Grants for guys in prison are for going to college are now available, and
Really, that's great news.
yeah, and so correspondence courses and stuff like that can be happen too, but San Quentin, when Jeannie Woodford became warden, she expanded a lot of stuff and got it really rolling on a big scale. And compared to the rest of the California prison system, that particular prison had a volunteer army that was going in there. I think there was something like I can't remember the number. It was over 1,000 people that were coming in there on an annual basis, bringing in different programs. And there was all these different ones. One of the things they had at San Quentin was a Bible college, and I finished that. They also
had a Bible college there.
Oh yeah, it's still there, and they have I finished it. They had a 2-year a 2-year college program, and I got my associate's degree out of that. So there's
That's
some
great stuff.
yeah, and it's still all there, and it's going great. I mean, although the COVID really slammed everything shut, but it didn't change the fact that, and we have a governor who's very proactive in trying to support all this stuff. So they're as soon as the pandemic is really squashed, you're going to see a whole lot of things probably going on in San Quentin if they don't shut it down. Because the governor put a moratorium on death row, and so none of the guys are being executed, and they're being shipped out of San Quentin, and San Quentin is over 200 years old. And
yeah, that's an old prison. I didn't know it was 200 years old though. Wow.
Yeah, I misspoke. It's over 150 years old. But because of its age, there was been over the years a lot of talk about it one day being shut down because it's very archaic. But I kept telling people when they were talk to me about it, and I was the editor of the San Quentin News, so I got a lot of conversations going on, and they kept telling me, well, one of these days they're going to shut this place down. And I says, not as long as death row is there, and death row isn't there anymore. So
yeah. Let me get a couple comments here. I got a guy who just woke up this morning. Adam Talks Prison. I got up early to watch your live, bro. It's 7:41 a.m. here in Sydney, Australia. So Adam's got a prison channel called Adam Talks Prison. It's for Australian prisons. Adam did some time in Australia prison, and his channel will tell you all about it. So guys, check out his channel. And there was another person on here, Marlene Davidson. Hey, Marlene, good to see you on here. Thank you very much for coming on. And Kathy D, who's also from Australia, she says, "Hi, Adam. I am in South Australia and half an hour behind you." So I got 2 people from Australia watching us, and they're actually leaving comments. Thank you guys from down under, because there's prisons all over the world, for sure. Ken, what's going on with San Quentin? There was a program I read about doing for computers, doing coding school, and they were actually paying $16 an hour. I think that's what it said, that they paid you while you were in prison. I mean, I don't know if you got to keep the money, but half of it went to any kind of fines or restitution you had. But have you heard about that program?
Oh yeah, it's still there. Last I heard, it was still there, and I knew a lot of the guys that finished that, and it provided a good source of income for the guys going in. They would have to, it was. I'm trying to remember the term that they used.
It also set them up with a job once they got out, right? Too.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I've been out 5 years now, so I'm still tied into a degree. I get a subscription sent to me every month for the San Quentin newspaper, so I can see what's going on in there. And by the way, the San Quentin newspaper is online, and if you want to get an actual copy of the newspaper, you can just go online and order a copy, and it'll be mailed to you. So,
really?
Yeah, it's there. I mean, the papers. I mean, you can read all the articles on the internet itself, and they talk a lot. They talk a lot about a lot of good stuff in there. They got a lot of information about what's going on, not just in San Quentin or the state of California, but across the nation. And they've won awards. They've been recognized at length and depth, and so there's a good source of information if you want to find out things about this.
Is any of this stuff censored by the time it goes from the prison to my web browser, or is it pretty much unedited?
Well, here's the rub on that, and when I first was asked to step up to the paper there, there was a whole lot of skepticism about this wasn't going to be a real paper, and the thing is that so there came a time and a place where there was this article that was published. I didn't write it, but I was the editor, and I made the decision to publish it. And the warden has the prerogative at any point to say, you can't publish that article, or whatever it is it may be, and they can say, no, you can't do that one. But they let this one go through, and it was on the conditions of the whole, of the ad seg, and it was really bad. And it was a really bad situation, and it wound up getting both a warden and a captain early retired. And
really, wow.
Oh yeah, and
that's what they're calling it, early retirement. That's how they word it.
That was the way it went down, and it caused me quite a bit of grief too. Trust me. They don't do a whole lot of expose, stuff like that there, but every now and then there's something in there that'll raise the anger of the administration in some level or another.
Right.
But for the most part, it's about what is going on in the system as far as how you can get yourself better prepared. All the different programs, all the self-help, all those other things that are going on there, and they talk about all the most recent laws that are being passed. Case law, legal decisions and stuff like that the courts have made to change laws and everything like that. So it's kind of.
I was gonna say the news on the Pell Grant's great to hear.
Yeah, it's a big one, and many of the prison systems with substantial populations probably are going to have their own colleges as a result of that. So, so that's all cool. I think it's a great idea, but on the other side of the coin is that, the difference between San Quentin and the prisons that, back in the Pell Grant days, because I was I was attending classes back then. I really wasn't that focused on my college at that point. But when they paid the teachers to come into the prisons, they weren't as motivated.
So you had real teachers. You had real teachers coming inside. Okay.
Oh yeah, well, they're college professors and teachers and stuff like that. And you got an occasional one that was very motivated, but when San Quentin opened up, their college program is all volunteer, and we were pulling from UC Berkeley, UCSF, and some of the big colleges in the Bay Area, and those instructors, man, they were on fire for teaching, and it really made a big difference. That's where I remember when my classes it was at a different prison too. The teacher told me, he said, if you show up here every week, you're going to get an A. So,
all right.
It was that simple. It was like, I did a little bit more than that, but I got an A in the class. I'll say it that way.
It almost sounds worth it to do it when I go to prison. I mean, they're going to feed you, give you a place to live, free college, all these programs. God, you get to work out, and no bills to pay. But it's not.
Anybody has that mindset. Go commit a felony. It's pretty simple. The reality is that there's a whole lot of grief that's attached to it.
Yeah.
And you are.
I only bring that up because you're going.
Well, the mindset. I understand what you're saying. It's like how. But the reality is that you want to talk tough on crime on one hand, but then you all want to talk reform on the other. And somewhere in there, you got to realize is that and I said it before. It says if you didn't know better, if you knew better, you'd have done better. And somewhere in there, these people, when they pick up that thing, and it is much cheaper for the taxpayers to educate these individuals, to get them prepared, to spend the money on the front end, because they're going to have to spend a lot more money when they go out and they keep coming back. And
you're so right, my friend. Right.
And it is so financially practical. And that was really one of the biggest things that they didn't talk about for a long time under this tough on crime thing is that the cost and the economics of it was you got to give these guys a chance, and you got to give them the tools to do it. So,
and I hope we go in that direction, because we were talking about in the 70s they had prison reform and all these programs, and then all that stuff happened in the 80s and 90s, and now we're finally getting back to everything you just said. And let's, I hope they go on that path, because
the big scary thing about what you're talking about, and you say we're finally back on that path, is 3 strikes is still sitting there.
Yeah, that's true.
All these different laws that they're not using them right now, because it's always been at the discretion of the prosecutors whether they want to do that or not. And there's been voted in a lot more soft on crime prosecutors than has been in the past. But I'm starting to see those little flags up in the air. That's like, you're going to let this guy, get away with walking out of prison after 2 years. I heard the stories. You watched it on TV, like, how that guy only did 5 years for that. He should have done 10 years for that.
Yeah, you hear that.
You hear the story about that guy only did 10 years. He should have done 20, and it just kind of snowballed up. And one of the things that psychiatrist that I've met when I was at my first year clean, he says to me, it's all in cycles, and things kind of go in big, huge circles. And because, before this time and place where you're talking about in prisons, California prison system, where they got really strong on rehabilitation, they had a huge prison population before that. And it was just, and they finally made these laws and passed these laws, changed it around, but then we went right back to it again eventually. So, who knows? It is what it is. I think that it's unfortunate the way that society sometimes doesn't quite get the message. But the reality is that if you pay on the front end, and it's like there's a mantra, especially in the state of California, is educate, not incarcerate. That's a very important thing. And the prison system and the education systems that we got in a lot of these places where these guys come out of, they're very bad. And the
Yeah,
social structures they're very bad too. So,
I mean, San Quentin's got a lot of programs. Then there's a lot of other prisons that don't have too much to offer. And the feds, I don't know why the feds don't have close to any of the programs that the state does. The feds, you would think, have more money. I don't know if the feds really care. They passed the First Step Act, which is helping, but to go to college in the feds is kind of unheard of unless you do the correspondence course, which you have to set up before you go into the prison. And it's all by mail, and it's tough. But yeah, the feds don't really offer that.
Well, whether it's education or whatever, I think that people, my attitude is this. Okay, if you go into prison, and there's a couple of guys talking about this on here, that are facing terms. You apply yourself in whatever way you can. It pays dividends. It pays back big time. And the idea that all you got is just misery to face you and everything like that. Trust me, San Quentin was not an easy place to do time at, and I expect that at least whoever's on this screen here watching this show, they're not going to be doing that much time either. So
San Quentin's a scary place. Don't get me wrong, because that's the last place I want to go. Let me read you a comment here from Adam, who's in Australia. He says, "Hi, buddy. Thanks for the shout out, bro. I spent 17 years of my life in and out of prison, and change is possible. Just look at me." And I watched this channel. Yeah, in and out of prison. He didn't get it after the first time or the second time or third time. Right. And this is in Australia. And he did the whole life of drugs and crimes and all that. And he's finally seeing the light. But we don't all, we don't get it the first. Some of us don't get it the first time we go to prison. It's a shame.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. One of the things I will tell you is that there's one surefire rehabilitative element, and that is a lot of time. Yeah. Spend a lot of time locked up. You're going to change your attitude about it, when you finally start walking out the door. Now, some of that is because as you get older, your testosterone starts to lower down, and you go bald and the other things like that. But I mean, yeah, there's that war of attrition that goes on. But on the other side of the coin is that, and my hat's off to you, Adam. Congratulations. Is that, I've seen guys that went through that cycle in and out, and they did multiple terms that walked and came up from H unit after about their third term in prison for whatever reason. Well, some of it before the 3 strikes, but for whatever reason, they weren't doing a life sentence at that point in time, and they were getting it too. And they started to say, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to go through this process one more time. Yeah. But very few of them walk out the door of the prison system into a different lifestyle if they don't prepare themselves while they're in.
There you go. Prepare while you're in. That's
yeah.
For me, it was in and out of jails, and then prison woke me up. We don't all get that opportunity, but like you said, prepare while you're in there. Like we were talking, how some guys want to wait till they get out before they're going to go into their life. It's probably not going to happen if you wait that long.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about on here is my attitude about the system itself. I told you I worked for Jeannie Woodford. She went to work. She went on to become the director of the prison system as well.
And didn't you just have dinner with the warden recently on the outside?
Yes.
How many people go to prison can do that when they get out?
Yeah.
Huh?
Before I moved up here to live with my wife, we got married in February of this year. Back in June of last year, I had dinner with her and her husband at her home. And,
that's amazing. What a turnaround. What a 360 degrees turnaround in your life, man. Wow.
Well,
from that freeway overpass 40 years ago to dinner with the warden on the outside. Wow.
Well, she's retired. We'll make that. And there's a lot of the prison guards that, staff, guards, sergeants, lieutenants that I'm also on Facebook with as friends. And they're very good friends of mine. Because not all of them were bad. Not all of them were of the mindset that we just deserve to be suffering in there for whatever it takes. There's a lot of them I never bothered friending, I can tell you that too.
Wow.
But, yeah.
I got to give a shout out to Kay McConnell. He just put a $20 super sticker on there. And he says, on your only hair 7 months ago clean. What's he? Oh, wait. It says, okay. I'm sorry, I'm missing his comment here. Now it makes sense. I was reading an article where a pastor was sentenced to 5 months, and they put him in a work catter. Okay, he's talking about this catter system. Anyways, I'm sorry about that. Thank you though, Kay McCannell. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Go on, Ken, with the warden story.
Well, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
She was very supportive. That, like I said, she was the same one who got the ball rolling for the prison system, for San Quentin as being this hub of transition and reform and everything like that. She really opened up the doors wide for people to come in and bring the programs that have really set the stage on a big level for San Quentin being a place where you can go to get your life in preparation for release.
So now wardens have like a whole board members they got to uphold to and all that. So I don't know how much power a warden really has, because even if the warden wants to do the right thing, the people around the warden could put a stop to it. Is there politics behind all that, or does the warden kind of have that power to change things or not change things?
It's not like it used to be. Every prison back in the 50s was, the warden made the ultimate decisions, but and ultimately they got to answer to the governor and about what's going on there. But there was there's a whole lot of bureaucracy that's in Sacramento, where a whole lot of stuff, and it used to be that the warden had ultimate, almost autonomous discretion. Much of that has gone away, and many of the policies are now made in Sacramento for all over the prison, all over the Department of Corrections.
So I wanted to talk about what you've done now since you've been out of prison. You've talked a little bit about that, but I know you're helping men out there change their lives, not going back to prison. Because guys, every Thursday night, I meet with Ken. We have a little recovery meeting, and I know that you got different guys coming on there who have gotten out of prison, and you help these men. You help them now that they're out of prison. Your work hasn't stopped. Is that right?
Well, I'm in a ministry here here in Chico, where I moved to, and we have a very, very involved homeless service program that we do, and what is he saying there? I can't read.
Oh, he says, "Do I still look stiff a lot, Sean?" So when he started his channel, he was kind of just talking like this, and it's when you're new, especially on YouTube, and I was talking to him with this guy Harvey we know, who has another prison channel, how you had to get all loosened up and stuff. Once you get your channel going and your personality, it'll develop,
Adam,
it'll come
you
out.
Have to emote. You have to emote, Adam. Be expressive. But I've been doing homeless ministry, working with this one poor boy. He is just so bad, he just cannot get sobriety, and taking him down to a detox center for 4 trips and to a mission for a possible thing, and he just he's out of there. He's maybe gets enough clean up to so they can go back out there, but he keeps winding up on the streets. But that's not my job. That's God's job to change him around. So
there's a question for you, Ken, on the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, it was a long time. 39 years. I served 39 years. So so I'm loving life out here. I can tell you that. It's being in 12-step work and Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm called on to speak a lot. I will be speaking at a meeting tonight. It's like and when you start talking about, the prison life and everything, and the biggest blessing I can tell you about is, it's not the biggest, but one of the things that I did, I made a decision about, and because I got influenced hugely by AA people coming in to bring in the message, bring in sobriety and stuff.
Right.
I patterned my life after the way they carried themselves, and I made a decision when I was early in my sobriety that I didn't want to walk I didn't want to walk out of a prison like a prisoner. I didn't want to walk out of prison like a quote convict who who had tattoos all over him. I got a couple tattoos now, but I didn't get them while I was in.
You went the whole 39 years with never getting a tattoo?
Not one.
Wow.
And the thing that I'd like to say, the thing that I like to say about that is that if you put me in a room full of businessmen and attorneys and and professors and all these other people, they're not going to ask this question, where I did my time at. They're going to ask me, maybe they'll ask me where I graduated, college, but
sure,
not where I don't identify as a convict. And the only place, and I'd hear guys coming in, while I was in the prison system, they said, "Man, I'm a convict. Don't talk to me like that." And I asked them, I said, "So, where do you put convict on your resume?"
Yeah.
Believe me, their face would go beet red on that question,
right.
But it was true. And it's very real is that, it doesn't serve a purpose outside of the prison. And, and don't get me wrong. I wasn't one of these guys sneaking around, snitching on everybody and telling them and everything. A lot of people thought I was, and I thought that was okay too, because if they thought I was a snitch, they weren't going to tell me anything in the first place.
There you go.
I wasn't running around there telling all these people and everything like that. I didn't, and it's just, I did my own time. But I had made up my mind that I wasn't going to walk out looking like I had done all this time. And it has definitely paid off on a big level, So, I try to present myself in a professional manner. I'm not living the high life out here. I was teasing you about you bragging about driving a Ferrari, but,
right.
I mean, I really don't have a whole lot of finances nowadays, but I don't need them. I'm happy with what I got. My wife, who's a retired school teacher, now that girl, she's got quite a story for herself, but, she's a retired school teacher and she's financially set. And, I'm living comfortably because of her. But, I'm just grateful for what I got. I continue to do what I'm responsible to do, what my God would have me to do. And, and if I don't open my mouth and tell you I've been in prison, you're not going to know.
That's right. You wouldn't know. Yeah. Marlene's asking what you were in there for.
I will say this much, Marlene. I took somebody's life that didn't deserve to die. And I'm very regretful of it. There's nothing I'm proud of at all.
Well, Ken, I think we've been talking for quite a while, and I've heard your story. And thank you so much for sharing everything. I know I've been after you. I know maybe a year to get you on one of these shows, but thank you so much. Do you have any last words for people coming out of prison? I know there's family members I watch this channel from the Wings for Life network, and they got family coming out of prison. Any advice for the family that's got incarcerated people in there for when they get out, how the family can, react to the day they get out and get on with their life, that kind of thing?
Well, my best advice is that don't turn your back on the help and support that's around you that you can get. And, for the ones that are going in, I say to you is that, I've had a motto for decades now. And if I did doing the right thing gets the right results. If you compromise while you're in there, those things that you pay a price down the road. It's maybe convenient, like Sean was telling about the guy who, would steal chicken out of the thing and bring it back for drugs. People steal food for other reasons too. And there's a whole hustle that goes on in any prison. the more you do that, the more you get intertwined with that. For your own sake, quit smoking now. If you smoke cigarettes, because the price of a cigarette inside of the prison is more than you really want to pay. And you're going to get, if you smoke a regular, you're going to get hooked into a hustle that you probably might regret. So, but
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, and that goes on everywhere now because they ban tobacco in every prison as well. And it's like the value of the price of tobacco inside the prison systems is more expensive than heroin.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's more than heroin.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. So you're paying out the nose for something that really after you get done with it, you start coughing and hacking, and you wonder what on earth you're doing it for in the first place. The guys coming out getting after they've done their time, if the families and speaking to them is that it's a question, it's a little bit of both. It's tough love with compassion. And I can't sit here and tell you each and every situation where you got to do one or the other. It's about measurements and stuff. Many people come walking out. Many people walk out of the prison system, including myself, with PTSD. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah, 40. I can imagine you must have had that as long as you were in there. Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing, but nevertheless, there's certain. The reality is that even if that's not their fault for whatever they're suffering with, the solution to it is something that they have to take responsibility for. And you can't lay down and be a victim if you expect to make anything significant out of yourself after the fact. And so family members should do their best to encourage, not just allow them to lay down and not do anything. They have to be active. They have to do, the parolee has to make the work and do the work. And just about every guy coming out of the system, there are resources that they provide for them. They're available. You can figure them out and look through the internet and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, we can help you here where I'm at, and
Exactly.
or we have partners and stuff. Yeah, I've networked this whole Albuquerque community. I'm getting to know all resources when you get out of prison. So give us a call at Wings for Life. We can help you. We can help you wherever you live. We can steer you in the right direction. That's for sure.
Yeah. And going back to that question that Kaden was asking about, the thing that I will say about that is I've met some people inside the prison system that probably most people on here would agree they should never get out. And maybe they won't. But I do know this is that many of them have redeemed themselves in many different ways. I personally know Tex Watson and the Manson clan. And yeah, I ran into Charles Manson too, and he was always just tweaked out. But Bruce Davis and Tex Watson, I knew them very well. We did Bible studies together for a long time, and I can tell you is that they're not the people that much of this is the media portrays them to be. They're respectable human beings now. For whatever.
Scott Peterson, he's over there. He was over there too, right?
Yeah, but he was on death row. I think his sentence was just commuted, but he was on death row, and so I didn't bump into him much. The way the prison San Quentin is built, you don't interact with them. So
okay, death row's its own prison in itself, I guess.
Exactly. So. Thank you.
Well, Ken, I think we'll wrap it up. It's been way over an hour. I appreciate your time so much, Ken. I know what you talked about today was inspiring and gave hope to some people out there. If they can just do 1/10 of what you did while you were in prison, they still have a better chance in life to come ahead. Ken, just God bless you for everything you do, and keep doing the Thursday night thing that we do in those meetings. And I don't know, God's been with you the whole time, man. I don't know if you realize that, but he was there before prison and he's there after for you. So,
well, we haven't. The AA book talks about being happily and usefully whole, and and by God's grace, that has happened in my life. So I'm grateful for what I've been given.
I'm gonna let you go. Have a wonderful 3-day weekend, and don't barbecue too much over there in Chico. Ken, God bless you. Okay, thanks again.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.